I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. This morning, we're going to start the meeting with a presentation by Chairman Brian Polite of the Council of Trustees. And if you'd like to come up to the podium and tell us who's with you and...
I'm just going to quickly take attendance, and then you can remain, it won't take long. Supervisor Moore.
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Present.
Councilman Iacili.
Present.
Councilman Pell is absent. Councilman Schiavone.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Good morning, town board members. Thank you for having us today. I'd like to acknowledge the Shinnecock team that has been brought today. Miss Councilwoman Bianca Collins from the Council of Trustees of the Shinnecock Nation, and Miss Taylor Troge, tribal attorney and also tribal member.
Welcome.
So we come here this morning, and thank you guys for the invitation to give an update to not only the town board, but also to the Southampton community on a project that we've been working on now for the better part of 6 years for our economic development. It is a gas station travel center located on our Westwoods territory in Hampton Bays. So this is a follow-up to the meeting that we had with the supervisor, Ms. Maria Moore, and also Councilman Iacili. And we did include more slides on this one because I think what we have found over the last couple of weeks with all of the news articles that have been coming out and some of the comments that have been made, there is a lot of misinformation going around regarding Shinnecock's land holdings, how we hold that land, and what that land actually means to us. So today, we will get into the particulars of the project, but the beginning slides are really an overview of Westwoods, what it means to us, how it's been held over the years, the taxation issues, as well as the zoning issues. And I think that's greatly important for the community at large to really realize what those land holdings over there at Westwoods means. And then I will get back into the particulars. So if we can bring up the PowerPoint. Just quickly while they're doing that, the PowerPoint presentation, I did send over a link last night. I don't know if you guys were able to open it because I did want to give the board a chance to review it prior to the meeting to see if you guys had any questions. I'm not sure if you received it or not.
I don't think the IT even let it.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I did provide copies now on a jump drive to the town, so that is public record. You guys can review it, and that's a copy for you guys to have.
Okay.
Sunday, do you have a copy of that?
I do not. Not
Okay,
yet.
Brian, can you make sure the town clerk gets it, because then it's like...
Sure, no
Excellent.
problem. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just quickly, the Shinnecock Indian Nation does have what's called a Section 17 corporation. For those individuals, can you just go? I'll do it myself. Boom. So what you see up here is the Great Seal of the Shinnecock Indian Nation, and what you're probably familiar with that, what a lot of people do not realize or not familiar with, is the second seal that we have under there, which is our Shinnecock Sovereign Holdings. It is a federally chartered corporation. What Section 17 means, there's a Section 17 of the 1934 Indian Regulation Act, which allowed tribes to divest and segregate their business assets from their corporate assets, and it was really a mechanism that the United States government tried to put in place for tribes to become economically self-sustainable. So that is the corporation that the tribe currently owns. It's wholly owned by the nation, it's ran by the nation, and it allows us to create subsidiaries so that we can do business in a way that is separate from some of the government restraints or the time-consuming restraints the government has as far as that. So there are wildly successful Section 17 corporations throughout Indian country, and it's really been a great tool the tribes have been able to use to become economically self-sustainable. So
It's incorporated with the federal government.
yeah, it's a federally chartered corporation. It took us 2 years to get up and running back in 2016, and it's really allowed us to, again, become more economically self-sustainable. There's wildly successful Section 17s all throughout the country. In Indian country, the most notable ones is Ho-Chunk, which is a tribe out in Wisconsin. They have a Section 17 corporation. Again, it's wildly successful. They bring in over $400 million a year, heavily diversified. And then obviously you have the Seminole Tribe of Florida, which goes without saying is a very successful tribe. But they use these Section 17s in a way where they can get federal funding, and also, again, it provides the tribe with the means to go out there and get business done. So when you see that seal throughout the PowerPoint, it is the nation. It's just our corporate arm. So with that being said, there are 4 other logos on the bottom. All of these companies, they're not our business partners. They're our actually employees, our contracted employees of this project. Sunflower Consulting, KQ4, which is our engineering firm, Worth Group Architecture is our architectural firm, and then Moorfield Construction, which is actually the firm that is doing our construction. All of these companies are major companies in the industry. They have a wealth of knowledge under their belt and are professionals. So that's the team that we've assembled, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Taylor Troge, who's going to go through the first several slides in regards to the Westwoods Holdings. Just click it with that.
Thank you so much, Chairman Polite. So I just wanted to go over the zoning, because I know there's some questions from the community about why we're allowed to embark on economic development on our sovereign land. And so when we look at the Southampton town zoning map, this is an official Southampton map, but I did add coloring so that you could see where the Shinnecock Neck territory is and where the Westwoods territory is. So we do appear on the zoning map as Indian reservation. However, we are not subject to zoning by the town. That was an issue that was clarified back in 1987 when Assemblyman Fred Thiel was the Southampton town attorney. There was an economic development project planned back then. The town of Southampton attempted to incorporate R60 zoning onto Shinnecock lands. The state responded almost immediately at the request of the the Shinnecock trustees to clarify whether or not Southampton could zone sovereignly held land. The answer was a clear no. And so while we do appear on the zoning map, it's not because the town of Southampton has any authority or ability to zone us. And so there's also a question of, well, how is it that Shinnecock has this land? And it really goes back to the first Indian deed of 1640, which you can find readily accessible on the Southampton town website. There is a reservation in that deed. You can see here before the subscribing of this present writing. It is agreed that ye Indians above named shall have liberty to break up ground for their use to the westward of the creek aforementioned on the west side of the Shinnecock Plain. We know that the creek is now the Shinnecock Canal, and so all of the land west of the canal was reserved in this first recorded instrument in 1640. So if you're curious, again, you could check that out on the Southampton town website. And this is something, this issue of zoning and authority has been questioned throughout time. And so I really wanted to pay special attention to a case that happened in 1922. It was called Shinnecock Tribe versus Hubbard. And it was a full court case. It went to trial. There was discovery made. And ultimately, the court found that this tract of land has never been taxed at any time, and that the title to the Shinnecock Nation really cannot be disputed. They did do a complete search of all records and could find no deed to this land from the trustees of the town of Southampton. And this slide is just going over the issues that were brought up again in the 1980s when the town of Southampton did attempt to enforce zoning regulations on Westwoods, and the New York Secretary of State again concluded that the town of Southampton zoning ordinance cannot apply to the nation's land because it is sovereign territory, and that includes all of these 3 parcels and also the roads that you see. You see Newtown Road and also Sunrise Highway are under the complete sovereign jurisdiction of the Shinnecock Nation. And there's also an issue of taxation and a question of whether or not these lands are taxable. And so we, in our due diligence, did a really deep dive into the records of Suffolk County, who is the holder of the early records of the town of Southampton. And another question keeps coming up, well, is this reservation land? And so you can see going back until, this record's from 1930, but the county of Suffolk holds the records going back to 1927 from the town, and this is the exemption roll. And so you'll see here on the exemption roll, Shinnecock Indian Reservation, and it clarifies that the reservation land includes the land that we currently know as the Shinnecock Neck, but also the woodlot that is Westwoods. And so we did a FOIA request for every single tax roll, and so just spanning decades, the town of Southampton has always recognized, as you can see from the records, that Westwoods is in fact Shinnecock Indian Reservation land, exempt from any type of taxation. And it goes on every decade. We spared you the expense. We did it every 10 years. But it's really clear going into modern times. These are records that I acquired from the Southampton town tax assessor's office. I accessed them through the library, and to modern day, the land is recognized as Indian reservation. And so what that means is, as a sovereign nation, the Shinnecock Nation has full authority to self-determine what it's going to do on its land in order to really protect the health, safety, and welfare of our tribal members, and that really includes our most vulnerable citizens, our children, and our elders. 2 groups that we hold very, very, very dear to our hearts. And so it's really undisputed that this is reservation land, that it's exempt from taxation, and that the town of Southampton has no ability or right to tax or zone it, and that's been the case. This has been litigated over and over and over again since the 1800s. And there's really no question that, there's no doubt that this is Indian reservation land, that it can't be treated different from the Shinnecock Neck. All of the records are very clear that it's wholly exempt from any authority over the town of Southampton. And our history there goes back. These are our wiki-ups that were in Canoe Place in 1800s, and a lot of people say, oh, well, you don't live there and there's no evidence of occupation, and quite frankly, it's not true. This is a document that's held in the Library of Congress that shows that, again, up until 1879, we were living in wiki-ups over in Canoe Place. Our entire tribe was centralized over in Westwoods before we were forcefully removed by the town of Southampton in 1859.
Tila, was that also the meeting house? Was the Westwoods property also used to be home to a meeting house that the Shinnecock used to use?
Correct. So that's what this slide is talking about, that there was a really large settlement over at Canoe Place, and that settlement was really what's commonly known in New England as a praying Indian village. The really heart of the community was Paul Cuffey's chapel. It's now the Canoe Place Chapel, so half of it still remains over as kind of in the area of Cowfish, if you're familiar with that area. And again, going back in the history books, you can see that we had a considerable settlement in this place, Canoe Place. So if you're not familiar with the term Canoe Place, it's a different name for Westwoods. So Westwoods, Canoe Place, Neomuk, you'll see these names throughout history. They're all names for the same place. And so we had three main chapels, one at Sabonic, one in the Shinnecock Hills, and one at Canoe Place, and that's really where our population density was settled. And so this is that 1922 case, because a lot of people say, oh, this isn't Aboriginal land of the Shinnecock Nation. So this was examined in depth in 1922, and the plaintiff in that case made the assertion that the nation had purchased this land, and the judge found that there was no basis for that. There was no record, nothing, no evidence produced. And again, this is going back hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's going over all of the allegations that we're hearing now. It's already been really resolved by the court system of the state of New York for hundreds of years now that, in fact, there exists no deed to this land because it has always been held by the Shinnecock Nation. It is the place where all of the Shinnecock tribal members descend from. We know that because we went through a very lengthy process of getting federally recognized. It took us 32 years of working with BIA genealogists who traced back our lineage and found through these land records and deeds and church records from the presbytery who kept very careful records that in fact we have always maintained our primary settlement at Canoe Place. And that lasted up again until 1859 when we were forcefully removed by the town of Southampton. And so I know it's hard to see on this screen, but you do have a copy of it. And so I think it's really interesting because a lot of the things that we're hearing now, again, really have been examined. And this is just one court case. There are a couple that, continuously, probably every 100 years, the same questions come up. And every 100 years, the court comes to the same conclusion that this is, in fact, sovereign Shinnecock land.
That's
Yeah.
the Hubbard case you're talking about?
Yes,
They
this
have
is
up there?
the James Cassidy case.
Okay. And then how does I know the case was vacated, the decision was vacated with the Bianco decision in the federal court, with the litigation that went on with the proposed casino. I understand there was federal recognition subsequent to that. And how does that play into your history of the?
So the 2003 litigation is really interesting. It was vacated in 2012 by the Second Department. There were a number of issues really with that case. Primarily an expert report done by someone named James Lynch, who was hired by the town of Southampton. We have been able to dispel all of the adverse findings that the federal court in the 2003 litigation found in favor of the arguments that Mr. Lynch was making. Quite frankly, the evidence that the nation put forward for whatever reason by this court, which, by the way, the reason that it was vacated was because the higher court found that the trial court had no subject matter jurisdiction to even hold the trial or make a determination on the matter. Yet they did, and they relied on this expert witness. When you really look at what he presented, it's very easily refutable by using actual facts. And again, at that time, 2003, that was about 20 years after the first economic development project attempt, when Assemblyman Fred Thiel was the Southampton attorney, was thwarted. So really what the town of Southampton was doing was using its massive amounts of resources and wealth to bring on litigation firms and really assault the Shinnecock Nation, who has always had all of its resources stolen, going back to 1644, when the town of Southampton was enslaving Shinnecock fetuses still in their mother's wombs, and stealing all of our land, resources. Ever since all of that, we have been very impoverished. We do not have the money for litigation, and so it really wasn't a fair fight, and it wasn't just, and it wasn't right, but thankfully it was vacated, and it was found that there was a complete lack of jurisdiction for the trial to even happen. And again, as an attorney, you can't, a case that is vacated has no precedence, so it's really of no value. However, we did go through great lengths to dispute those adverse findings that were largely the result of James Lynch's historical analysis of our ownership of the land at Westwoods, and that has been acknowledged since by the federal government following our recognition in 2010.
If I just follow up, if the Bianco decision had not been vacated, but then you did receive federal recognition, 7-10 years later, what would have been the impact? What do you feel the impact of that federal recognition to the Bianco case? Would that have had any impact on that and the findings, do you think?
Yeah, I believe that had we been federally recognized, there would have been no question about our authority to assert our sovereignty and our jurisdiction over the Westwoods parcel. I don't believe that it would have even been questioned.
Right. I guess asked in the other way was, if you were at the time of that case being tried in front of Judge Bianco, if you were a federally recognized tribe at that time, what you're saying now is like, what would have been the impact, do you think, in Judge Bianco's decision, or what he could have been considering in his findings?
So I guess I'm confused about what you're asking, but
Well, yeah, I mean, basically what I was asking is what impact the fact that you did obtain federal recognition 7-8 years later, and then whether, if you had federal recognition at the time of the trial, I guess it's really the same question. What impact do you think that would have?
I think I know what
Right, would you wanna-
So one of the aspects of that case was, as Ms. Troge had stated during the federal recognition process, there was a lot of research done that prior to that research being done was not really looked at by the court. So if we would have been in a place of federal recognition back then, the arguments that Ms. Thiele was presenting, the evidence and the research that was uncovered during the federal recognition process would have been introduced as evidence in that case. Therefore, the decision wouldn't even have went the way that it would, because of the research that was done and was not looked at by the court at that time.
Okay.
yeah, subsequent to that litigation, there was research done with the assistance of the federal government to help us to clarify some of the things that occurred and some of the findings that were made in the 2003 litigation. Also, as a federally recognized tribe, we would have been entitled to litigation assistance from the federal government, so I don't think that it would have went down the way that it did, but we're just really happy that we're in a place where we can move forward from everything that happened. We don't have to go through litigation to again resolve something that is continuously litigated, and except for the finding by the one court that didn't have jurisdiction, it really the history and the evidence really, does speak for itself. So I believe that if the case were to be litigated today, the court would reach a much different, conclusion, yes. And so,
Sheila, I thought, when we met, you had said something and I didn't understand. It sounded like you were saying that as a reason, I had asked you if the nation had applied for a federal trust. And you said, no, we don't need that because, and this is what I think you said, as a result of the federal recognition, it automatically, the land became held in restricted fee by the nation, and that there was something specific about New York law and New Mexico law that provided that. And I wasn't, if you could help me understand more what you were saying.
sure. So there's 3 ways that tribal governments can hold land in the United States. It's by fee, restricted fee, or trust. And so there's a question, I think, of, well, is this trust land? And trust land involves applying through a process called fee to trust. And so that's a way that tribes that hold fee to their lands can apply to the federal government to take the land into trust, in which case the United States becomes trustee of the land for the benefit of the tribe. And that's not an avenue that we're interested here. Typically, that's done for tribes who have been removed from their territories. It's a lot of tribes west of the Mississippi who no longer live on their Aboriginal territory. This land is very special and very unique because the nation never lost title to it. As you can see, there's been many court cases examining the subject of title. Something that comes up a lot, especially in the 2005 case decided by Justice Ginsburg, City of Sherrill. There's this question of, well, has the land ever been taxed? Has the land ever been zoned? As you saw here, this land has never been taxed. It's never been zoned. It's always been under the authority of the Shinnecock Nation. So the land therefore qualifies as restricted fee. The restriction refers to a restriction against alienation as a result of the 1790 Non-Intercourse Act, which was really championed by George Washington. He was looking to build a really strong alliance with the Haudenosaunee people. A lot of people know that a lot of their principles of consensus were the building block of our democracy as we know it now. And so this agreement was made by George Washington that he would not allow any individual, any institution, any town to purchase or otherwise alienate. So it's not limited to purchase. It's anything in the bundle of property rights, leasing, any type of encumbrance falls under the 1790 Non-Intercourse Act. And so that act attaches to the land in 1790. And so when we got federal recognition, it didn't bestow at that point, but it reaffirmed the federal government's responsibility to assist the Shinnecock Nation should we ever need assistance in asserting that this 1790 Non-Intercourse Act applies to our land holding. And so when we became federally recognized in 2010, it was an affirmation, but it wasn't the actual act of recognition didn't create the restricted fee. It's simply an acknowledgement of the restriction always being attached to the fee. And it's very unique. There's only 2 states in the United States that have restricted fee, New York State and New Mexico. And New Mexico, it's in regards to the Pueblos, who also, they had their first contact in 1540s and were never removed from their land like a lot of the other tribes were. So.
Historically, it seems like there was a lot of violations of the Non-Intercourse Act.
Yes.
Right? Just tremendous violations.
Yes.
It seems like it was ignored throughout the whole country. It seems.
Yes, and so there was a push in the 1970s by a number of tribes in the Northeast, led by an attorney named Tom Tureen, to really enforce the Non-Intercourse Act and the various violations. A lot of jurisdictions did make settlements with the tribes that are in their territories, the Penobscots, in Maine are one example. The Mohegans. It's very common to reach a settlement because of the violations of the Non-Intercourse Act. But here, again, it's simply a protection of the land because there is no loss of this land. It continues to simply exist with us as the fee holders, but the federal restriction does attach to it. I hope that clarifies.
I have a couple of questions. You mentioned the Haudenosaunee of 1790. We were still at war in 1790, and most of the Haudenosaunee sided with our enemy, with the British, with the exception of the Oneida. This act and what we did to the Haudenosaunee in upstate New York because of what they did was, I mean, when I say we, the United States of America and the state of New York, literally stripped their lands and chased most of the nations up there to Canada. Is the Non-Intercourse Act at that time is something that in written that lands cannot be taken from Native American nations?
Yes, and it wasn't a new theory. If you actually look at every subsequent sovereign, if you look at the English laws, the Duke laws, you see this restriction against alienation. There's a brief period in time when New York was under the jurisdiction of Connecticut, so the state of Connecticut.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just, and my point is, what we did to the Haudenosaunee at the end of the war was, I mean, and to
Brutal.
the people and their children was absolutely horrible, and it was done under this act. So, interesting. I have a question also about federal recognition in 2010, and you referenced it a number of times. Was the Westwood properties specifically stated in your application, and does the recognition of your nation, which we all recognize, is it stated in those documents of recognition? Excuse me.
Yeah, if you look at our petition and the finding for petitioner number 4, we were the 4th petitioner for the federal acknowledgement process in 1978. We do include both of our land holdings, and that's largely as a result of issues that were going on with the Indian Reorganization Act in the 1930s that Chairman Polite was talking about, which gives the authority for the Section 17 corporation. At that time, the federal government was made aware of the existence of our land holdings at Westwoods and at the Shinnecock Neck, separated, of course, by the Shinnecock Hills that were alienated from us in violation of the Non-Intercourse Act in 1859 by the state of New York. But yes, but the 2010 federal recognition was really a recognition of us as Shinnecock people. And so both parcels were included in the determination by the federal government.
Okay, and they're enumerated in, if I dig into there, we're going to see Westwood.
Yes,
Okay.
you may see it as Canoe Place or Neomuk,
Okay.
but you will see it if you look for and it's on the BIA website, the findings for petitioner number 4.
Thank you.
Yes.
Big fan of the Iroquois, by the way. We owe a lot to them in their governmental powers.
Yes, absolutely.
My understanding
really
of the Non-Intercourse Act was that lands could not be transferred without the approval of the Congress, right? I mean, that's what
Right.
I'm saying. And it wasn't a complete ban of transfer of lands, but it had to be approved by Congress. But it seemed like throughout the whole country, that was being essentially ignored. Yeah. So,
Okay.
a lot of lands are being transferred without any kind of congressional approvals or federal approvals.
Well, that law also was accompanied by General Schuler going up to upstate New York and displacing peoples in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
it's
scorch and
not
burn tactics were absolutely atrocious type
I
of
think
warfare.
the Oneidas went from holdings of about 6 million acres to about, at one point, 32.
I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
I know they did
That's right.
support the
I think that's in the,
colonists,
in the Sherrill case.
no
they
good
talk
deed,
about.
right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why, Shinnecock was able to peacefully exist here. We didn't engage in the war. So we were really able to maintain our land holdings and our presence here and not face a lot of the removal that other tribes had. This slide is a mural that's actually, that it was painted in conjunction with the Parish Art Museum. So I invite anyone who's really interested in seeing a visual representation of the history of Westwoods and Neomuc to visit this mural. It's on the campus of the Sisters of St. Joseph. It is open to the public for viewing, I believe, from sunrise to sunset, and it goes into the history of Neomuc. Geographically, you can see on the top where Westwoods is, we're carrying a canoe. So geographically, this is an isthmus, which is the most narrow portion of a land, and it's where we carried our canoes to be able to access the Shinnecock Bay and the Peconic Bay, and ultimately the Long Island Sound and the Atlantic Ocean. So that's, the primary reason why our entire population was centered there, because of its ease for travel, and also because of it being a seasonal fishing place for us. Here's a close-up. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Polite if there's no more questions, and he's just going to go over a little bit about process.
Thank you, Ms. Tro. So, really thought it was important. These slides were added from the last meeting we had. Obviously, these slides weren't on there, but I thought it was important for the Southampton community, those who, aren't bookworms and don't like to do a lot of research sometimes, to really get an understanding of our land holdings and what it means to the Shinnecock people. I think it was important for Ms. Troge to go over the challenges that we've had over the last several hundred years, not just the last couple of decades, with the town of Southampton. And this is no slight on the current board, because I think you guys are working with us, just the amount of, I would say, persecution that the Shinnecocks have faced with those land holdings over at Westwoods. And we didn't even get into the Shinnecock Hills and the kind of land theft that happened over there. But I think it was important for the neighbors of Westwoods. We use that word very loosely sometimes, and people don't really understand what that property meant to the Shinnecock people. So I want to thank Ms. Troge for going over that. So I thought that was important, and I want to thank her for that. So going forward, I just want to make it very clear that the Shinnecock Nation is here to answer questions voluntarily. We're not coming here as a requirement, but I would hope in the future that this could set a template for interactions between our governments when it comes to economic development on our territories, because I think it's hugely important for us to be good neighbors, to hear the concerns of community members that surround the Westwoods property. We're not saying we're always going to agree, but I think civility is important, and getting to the facts as opposed to what I call fantasy sometimes is important. So with all that being said, I'm going to get into the actual process and the renderings and answer questions from the board about the actual project. So select experience, I've kind of taken some of these slides out because it was really long-winded, and it was more for our community members than yours when we were leading up to getting this voted on. But one of the slides is KQ4. A lot of times, unfortunately, people think that we're just doing things haphazardly. We have assembled at-most professionals. KQ4 is the engineering firm that we hired for the renderings that you're going to see both off of Newtown Road, and also our desirable number one option would be the off-ramp off the highway. So that is the firm that has worked with New York State in the past. They've worked with other DOTs throughout the country on off-ramps and with Native American communities. It's unfortunate, honestly, that the State Department of Transportation has not responded to us, because we have brought professionals who know how to navigate that permitting process. So KQ4 is the company that will be handling all road renderings, and also the engineering behind it, the ingress and egress, the proper way to put a road out there. And again, they're also the firm that would help us through the permitting process. And that's just more information on them. When we get to the rendering, I'm going to show people, or show the town community members, why exactly we would go through a permitting process with New York State, because there's been questions on, well, if it's your land, what do you need a permit for? And you'll see the proper ingress and egress definitely goes before our land holdings, and that's the need to get a permit to do it the proper way from the engineering firm that said proper ingress and egress off the highway. So the process that we use, there's a timeline, and I don't have my glasses on, so I have it on my phone. In 2017, SSH board members started researching size and scope of a gas station project plaza on Sunrise Highway. Again, SSH is the acronym for Shinnecock Sovereign Holdings. That is our economic arm in their holding company, federally chartered. In 2019, size and scope reviewed by at tribal community meetings. We've had a lot of interaction with our community on this. From 2019 to 2021, outreach to local municipalities to get support for an off-ramp from Sunrise Highway. A letter of support was obtained from local officials supporting nation's off-ramp. So that was really our effort to go to the local governments, review plans, and then try to get support for the off-ramp, because obviously that is our number one plan of action when it comes to accessibility for the gas station. It would be very helpful for this current board, as well as community members who might be agitated by a road coming off a Newtown Road, to really help us to pressure or to demand, actually, that New York State go through the regular process that they would go through anybody else and work with us on an off-ramp. In 2021, several meetings were conducted with the nation to review all aspects of the project. On August 14th, 2021, a referendum vote of the General Council, which is a governing body of the nation. It's basically made up of all voting members, and we have to go to them for certain approvals. And they are a legislative body collectively. They authorized the gas station projects on West Woods in a vote of 118 yes and 9 no. That just kind of shows the overwhelming support in the Shinnecock community for this project. Trust me, votes don't go like that most of the time. In 2021, a concept design contest was conducted with tribal members submitting design concepts for the gas station travel plaza. There were 5 designs submitted, and 127 tribal members participated in the online vote. Our tribal member, Miss Autumn Rose Williams, won the contest and worked with the architectural firm to further review the design concept. So when we get to the slides of the design, that was something that we incorporated because we wanted more community buy-in. We wanted the community to feel that they were part of this. So all of the designs you will see was done in the design contest and was done by a tribal member who helped the architectural firm come up with the designs. And then in 2019 to 2024, Eastern Woodland Petroleum worked with Sunflower Consulting to secure a business loan to complete the project. So one of the things that Shinnecock is proud of on this project, it is the first fully financed project that we do not have to go outside and get a development partner or anything of that nature. This is a Shinnecock project funded by the Shinnecock Nation through a what's called a BIA secured loan. And is completely wholly owned by the nation. So the nation is extremely proud of that aspect of the project.
Is there, Chairman, is there federal funding backing the project as well?
Yeah, so what's a 90% guaranteed loan? It's another aspect of the federal government trying to help tribes become self-sustainable. In a regular transaction of a loan, the bank can foreclose on the land or the business itself because of non-alienation and things of that nature. Banks don't have that opportunity or that power. So what has happened over the years is tribes from housing to business loans really are, that door is shut, that avenue is shut to them because of that aspect. So what the government has done is the BIA comes in, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and guarantees 90% of the loan, which allows for the nation to then go out through a bank to get the loans necessary for housing and business. So it's another way, honestly, again, that the federal government has stepped up to the plate in trying to help tribes become economically self-sustainable.
So the federal government is helping with the loan process?
Correct. So some of the aspects of this, and this isn't just for Shinnecock, we're going to have workshops on construction. We'll be helping with tribal members. They'll be able to bid on some of the jobs around the construction. We're going to have job fairs and on-site training, not just for tribal members, but also for the Southampton community as well. Just another slide. on the workshops for tribal employment opportunities. So another misinformation, and I'm saying misinformation not coming from you guys, because I think the town board has been great with trying to discern fact from fiction and getting information from us, asking questions. I'm more going on some of the things we've just been hearing. We didn't do any economic impact studies. One of the aspects of the BIA loan is you have to do an environmental impact. And I would say even if we didn't have a requirement, we are Native Americans, we've been on this land for 10,000 years, and there's no way that we would go forward with a project of this magnitude without doing our due diligence to make sure the local ecology and the land is treated in the utmost respect. With that being said, we did engage an environmental group firm that in 2022, an impact statement. I did provide that to the town government, so it's not just a one-pager, and that was a requirement that we had to do. So there was an impact statement prepared, and based on the current conditions, the construction and operation of a travel center would have minimal environmental impacts. If built and operated as proposed, economic development is crucial for Shinnecock Indian Nation. The current proposal is well cited with minimal environmental risk. So again, I did provide a full copy of that to the town attorney, and it's open to board members to review. So getting into the design updates.
Can I ask you
Sure.
about process before we get into
Sure.
design? So you mentioned that plan number one would be to get egress from Sunrise
Correct.
Highway. And that is, what's the holdup with the state?
The holdup with the state thus far is litigation that we're currently engaged in, even though it's almost been 5 years. And the courts basically denied the New York State's request for a preliminary injunction. And one of the statements that was made in that denial is that the state government probably is not going to win the case. That does not deter them for continuing to waste our resources as a nation. We're almost $1 million into a lawsuit that money could have went to all kinds of different programs. So the DOT is basically saying that they're not going to talk to us until this, in my opinion, frivolous lawsuit against us is resolved.
And that is in regard to the construction of the monument.
The monument signs, correct.
The easement.
Yes,
because
correct.
You have the underlying property, but it's a
Correct.
easement
That's
for the
an
highway.
easement, and it's also another example of New York State just taking what they want without any regard for federal law. In 1958, I believe it was, they took an illegal easement and put a highway through our land holdings, and that's why you see from the maps our land being pretty much split with Sunrise Highway.
Do you have an engineering schematic or design for an on-ramp?
Yeah,
or off-ramp?
it's the next.
Hold on,
Okay,
on
so
the
that's
slide.
part of it.
Yeah,
All right,
this is
good.
part of the design update.
Cool.
It's the first. It's the next slide.
Because I know it's constrained.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah.
It's about 700 feet wide.
Yeah, yes, correct,
On the
yes.
highway there,
Yep.
so.
So
Okay.
before you move on to that, I just wanted to say that I did review the environmental report. It does state in that report that the entire area is sewered. It is not. So that's one issue that I think needs to be resolved. It also says that it shows an area proposed location, and it says that because of the proposed location, that all of the neighbors would be heavily buffered with wooded vegetation. And it shows none of the clearing down to Newtown Road that has been done, and all of the screening and vegetation between those homes that have been removed.
Not all of the
Well,
screening.
a lot.
And there's also, so I would get into that for a minute. First of all, the nation plans on, well, let me go back on why Westwoods is Westwoods anyway, and why we call it Westwoods. That is a place that the nation has always used for timber. Obviously, when you cut down timber, you replant trees. So when we remove trees, it does not, like we're not going to plant new trees. So that is a concern. I would also say, and this is just going into some of the frustrations that the nation has, a lot of those homes have intruded on our land properties over there, either by building pools that have intruded, putting campers, all kinds of things. So we had planned on putting not only a wooded, replanting trees that have been taken down, but putting up fences as well, because we are tired of people
And
encroaching.
I hope you know that at any time, you could call Southampton Town Code
We
Enforcement
have.
on that encroachment.
Oh, we have.
Or reach
Yeah,
out to
yeah,
us.
Yeah, we have in the past, and
Because, I mean, you can look on the GIS
Yeah.
and you can see it's
Yeah.
there, and it's
Yes,
a
correct.
logical, it's a,
yeah.
legitimate
So
concern.
what we can do, Ms. McNamara, or Councilwoman McNamara, and for the town board, is sit down with our environmental department that's on site with our cultural site and go over our plans for reforestation. But thank you for pointing that out, and I will get to the bottom of the sewage issue that you brought up.
Yeah.
And thank you.
It's just if they
Yeah.
thought that you were gonna be connecting to
Yeah.
a sewer system, you can't, so I don't know if that factored into what they were, obviously a rest area is a lot of
Yeah, I
sanitation.
can, again, because the environmental department did that, I can set up a meeting and get more clarity for you
Okay.
on that
Thank you.
aspect. Thank you. All right, so the design updates is, again, this is, to scale was done by QK4. I do apologize, it's a little pixelated because I could not, for the life of me, get the regular JPEG into it because it was too long, so I had to end up taking a picture of it. As you can see, the ingress on the right of coming off of the canal, you can see that it does traverse land that's not currently held by the Shinnecock, and KQ4 has gone through the process, again, of New York State and what it would require for proper ingress and egress, and this would be our ideal access to the gas station project, as well as it would affect the profitability, but not to the point where we wouldn't be able to build it if we had to come off of Newtown Road. But this is the preferable off-ramp from Sunrise Highway, again, with ingress and egress that's in line with New York State regulations on ingress and egress off of off-ramps. There are other,
I just want to
Sure.
stop you right there and ask you why you would have to go to the state for permitting for Sunrise Highway,
Yeah.
but not to the town for ingress and egress off of Newtown Road.
because as you can see, all of our holdings off of Newtown Road is controlled by Shinnecock. This right here, again, if I can just I can't point right there. If you see where it starts coming from going westbound, it cuts into property that's not owned by the Shinnecock Nation. The road, Newtown itself, is on Shinnecock territory, and we don't have any ingress, egress coming off of anybody's territory on or traversing anybody else's
But we
territory.
also
but
have
ours.
town roads that we have to maintain, and we can limit weight limits, we can limit construction vehicles, we
Correct.
can limit
Yes, you can.
access to that
Yeah.
roadway if we
Yeah.
have to, because it's, you're talking about a travel plaza
Yeah.
off of 27, which anybody that I've heard that supports this, supports it with that access.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nobody that I've spoken to, especially in the Hampton Bays
Yeah.
community, supports it with
Yeah.
access from Newtown.
Well, one of the things I would say to that, I would hope people won't fight us on that and fight the state to help us get the off-ramp. Far too often, the Shinnecock Indian Nation is challenged on economic development. That doesn't mean driving around in Maseratis or having a mansion. It's literally the well-being of our community. And we cannot wait around for New York State to sue us for 5 years when we can easily put a road that will have accessibility on a road that traverses our property that's 100% under Shinnecock's jurisdiction.
And DOT, what you've heard so far is they won't even look at an application?
That is the
So
party
speak
line
to
that
you
they are saying, correct.
Unless the litigation is
Correct,
resolved.
correct. And as far as limiting roads, ways, and things of that nature, and again, I'm not here to really tell this town board that you guys are the problem. But I will say, I think it's hypocritical of people in the community that would say they don't want a road here when literally Sunrise Highway was put in between our property in 1958. And I'm not saying tit for tat, but I mean, that just is the height of hypocrisy, I think.
I'm just saying Newtown Road cannot handle the level of traffic that this would generate.
I mean, right now, Newtown
I mean,
Road
it's a narrow,
yeah. Well,
windy, the road.
Yeah, I know the road very well, and we have had issues with people going from Sunrise to what's the name on our own land holdings over there, including dumping on our property, and all kinds of issues with people traversing that property. That's another aspect of an injustice when that road was even put through our territory without our approval.
But before we go down this road here of discussing Newtown, which I think is important, you're not looking right now to go to utilize Newtown as an access road. You are looking for this particular plan to move ahead.
This is number one, but again,
Okay.
the Shinnecock Nation is not going to be deterred from moving forward on economic development if we can't wait around for New York State to just say, oh, okay, now we're going to talk to you 6, 7, 8 years later, why we have, a budget that needs to be filled.
So what?
for
So
our
I guess
people.
what you're saying is New York State really needs to be a partner
Absolutely.
in this process.
Correct, and I would also say that we spent almost a year that we could have went forward with the project, almost more than a year, 2 years, trying to do this in a way that got the local municipalities to help us get the off-ramp, and then the DOT just shut it down. Eventually, you have to say enough is enough, and when you have the authority to do something and you can help your people, you go ahead and do it. That sounds unfortunate, but at the same time, the Shinnecock people have been rebuffed time and time and time and time again by New York State, and it's not fair.
And what you've heard from so far is Albany DOT, the Commission of the State DOT?
So they go back and
Albany?
forth. The latest that they said was they're not going to comment on it publicly until the litigation is resolved. I think 2 years ago there was a Newsday article when we came out and said we were doing a gas station, and they said that they had reviewed our plans and they'd be meeting with us. That was not accurate. It was not true, and they never returned our phone calls. We've had our Assemblyman Theo, who's been great at trying to bridge the gap between the nation and the DOT, be rebuffed as well, and he has a lot of experience working with the New York State Department of Transportation. We've asked the Assembly, the Black and Latin Caucus, is it the Latin Caucus?
Black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Asian.
Thank you. Caucus, both New York State Senate and the Assembly, for assistance with the DOT. And so far, it's just, I don't understand what's going on, honestly. Because this is our preferable route, not just economically speaking in the numbers and everything like that, as Ms. McNamara stated. One of the things, though, that I think is inaccurate is there won't be any 18-wheelers barreling down Newtown Road because we're not, this gas station will not be servicing 18-wheelers.
You still have to get fuel deliveries.
We do have to get full fuel deliveries, correct.
But I mean, we're already, and what I'm saying is, yes, I feel like we're being brought to the table as basically you help us with the state or else this is happening.
No.
And I
Yeah.
get that you have no control of the state. We have no control of the state either.
Yeah.
We do have control of our local roadways, and right now we're currently spending taxpayer funds
Yeah.
to restrict access to Newtown Road in the morning.
Yes,
So
correct.
I don't see that program not continuing because this goes on.
If you guys need to limit access to the road, that's within your jurisdiction. I would say, though, this is not, I don't put, metaphorically speaking, guns to people's heads and say this or that or else. That's not the style that I've ever been in my tenure as tribal chairman.
But
at
in
all.
all due respect, that's what this feels like.
But it's
Either
not
you help us
because-
with the state and we get this, or we're doing that anyway.
No. Miss McNamara, I came in good faith to the town government, to the assembly for the last 2 years trying to get an access ramp. But we did have a backup plan, and it wasn't an or else kind of thing. When it comes to our economic development and our sovereignty over our property and the well-being of our community members, we will still do it in a responsible way. It's not like we didn't do a traffic study back there, but we're not going to be deterred. And we're not saying
You have a traffic
guys need
study
to-
for it?
Yes.
If
That I
we
can
could
provide
get a
to you
copy, that
guys.
would be
Yeah.
great.
I'm not here today to say this or that or else. I'm here to answer questions and ask the town of Southampton, both the board and the community members, what I've been asking now for the last 3 years, is to help us navigate the DOT to make it more easily accessible so that this works for everybody, not just the Shinnecock Indian Nation. But at the end of the day, we have the full authority and right to access our property off of a road that should have never been placed there in the first place.
Have you got any feedback at all, Brian, from the regional office, the Hop Hog office? at all?
The
They just
regional
don't-
office is just
they
gonna,
get shut
they're
down.
just gonna
Yeah, yeah.
say everything, they're gonna refer you to Albany. I mean, Albany is where it all starts and where it all ends when it comes to the DOT.
Right. And the litigation, if they're relying on or referring to the litigation, they won't even review your application until. the litigation-
Correct. Well, that's.
Maybe
the-
it's a Teal question, but like, where
Yeah.
are we? I know that litigation is in the appellate division now, but two separate matters, is that what's?
So the Shinnecock Nation requested a stay of the proceedings in the lower court until two fundamental questions could be answered. Whether or not the nation is a party necessary to move forward. As you know, the lawsuit was not brought against the Shinnecock Nation. It was brought against our tribal leaders as individuals, and so we're challenging that on a jurisdictional basis. And due to the merits of our argument, the appellate court did feel that it was appropriate to issue a stay on the lower court's moving forward with discovery and trial and proceeding in the trial case. I do want to also just address the issue about wastewater. About 25 years ago, the Shinnecock Nation upgraded to advanced state-of-the-art nitrogen limiting septic systems. That is funded directly by the Indian Health Service, which is really wonderful. It's why you don't see us like rushing out to get the ARPA and the other funding that's available for septic systems. We already upgraded most of our residents on the Shinnecock Neck. That being said, last year there was mandatory appropriation. For the first time, it was advanced appropriation from the federal government. So anytime that any Indian nation throughout the entire country applies for any type of septic system or the intake of clean water, it's mandated to be immediately funded using federal money. So I hope that alleviates.
And that's the plan here. Any development, well, the development on this property will have some kind of cluster system or advanced IA
Yes,
systems?
the most state-of-the-art advanced systems are fully covered by the advanced appropriations from the Indian Health Service, IHS. So just, I hope that addresses any concerns about wastewater or even the intake of clean water, because I know we're going to have a convenience store.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. So the next slide is the
A question
proposed-
about this
Yeah, go
slide.
ahead. Sure.
So plan number one is what we're seeing here.
Correct.
And the north monument would stay in place, and the westbound entrance would be to the north of that
Correct.
monument. And so the nations can, what you want to do is to keep both monuments up, you're not taking them
No.
down. And that seems to be what.
Correct. And then we
kind of
also
the issue with
did-
the state of New York.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
So obviously the next slide is not popular, but at the same time is the current where we are after years of trying with the DOT. And again, I just kind of want to reiterate, this wasn't a you know, taking a hostage and saying we're going to do this. This was always a plan number two if we were not getting the DOT access to this. It's not the most desirable plan. One thing that tribal members are happy about, though, is it will stop the encroachment on our property over there, because these houses over there have encroached over the years galore. They hunt on our land illegally, they dump on our land illegally, and it's been really a sore spot with tribal members, because we don't have an on-site presence over there all the time, and a lot of the neighbors just think that they can traverse on our property anytime they want to do whatever they want to, from illegal hunting to, again, illegal dumping. So one of the aspects of this, regardless if we move forward with the road or not, will be a fence and a more effort of the Shinnecock Indian Nation to fully show where our lines of our property ends and starts. And we implore the Southampton community to stop illegally hunting and dumping on our Westwoods property. It does not belong to the town of Southampton. It belongs to the Shinnecock Nation. And regardless of some of the absurd viewpoints that somehow we're ruining the Hamptons and ruining the land, I will say that that portion of Hampton Bays is probably the most pristine portion of Hampton Bays when you look at the cluster that is the map of Hampton Bays with homes and businesses. So we very much push back heavily on the notion that somehow we're ruining open spaces when that entire area is pristine. We have 100 acres over there, and we're talking about developing 10 of that when the entire surrounding area is fully developed with marinas and Canoe Place Inn, that new place, and everything else that has developed over Shinnecock. You can look at Westwoods with pride if you like pristine landscapes. This is just the interior of the building. It's 11,000 square feet. I mean, the interior and exterior with about 24 gas station pumps. Again, everything will be up to the environmental codes necessary, both federal regulations and state regulations. Just because we don't have to abide by them does not mean that we will not abide by safety regulations. This is the renderings of what the property will look like. Again, it's 11,000 square feet. There will be a drive-through for a smoke shop and a C-store. Just more renderings. This is the interior layout. We will have a store for retail. We haven't decided yet if we're going to franchise a retail spot or just create one through our SSH holding company. We're also not 100% sure about alcohol sales, that there's an internal process that we have to go through on that. Currently, we are not planning on any alcohol sales at the C-store, given our constraints of tribal law.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about fire safety.
Sure.
When we put gas stations up, they're subject to inspection by Suffolk County Fire, FRES,
Yeah.
and some of our local folks. Who would have the inspection over
Well,
that
we
kind
would-
of thing?
yeah,
Fire
well,
suppression?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fine. We would work with the local municipality to provide those services. We've done similar things, adopted what's called coextensive laws, that just because, again, Shinnecock, we did the same thing with our cannabis regulations, we adopt coextensive laws.
This is part of the Hampton Bays Fire District,
Yes.
Hampton Bays Ambulance District. Have you reached out to?
Not yet, no, currently. And I have to check with my other managing director to see if
Uh-huh.
any of that has taken place yet.
Okay. They might need another truck. I'm not.
Well, no,
you know,
hey,
'cause
listen,
if
here,
it's a
here's
travel
the
plaza, that's a
thing though,
different
and
kind
this
of-
goes into being good neighbors and helping support not just our economy, but the local economy and the local municipalities. That's absolutely on the table if they need support. We've actually met with Southampton, this is on a different note, both the fire department and the EMS to try to help them get federal funds because they do service the Shinnecock Nation.
I would love to be a
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah,
I looked into
absolutely.
that with
Yeah.
the Puspatuck Nation as well, and currently the ambulance and fire in Southampton do not receive any federal monies,
Yeah.
but, you know, do the
Yeah.
right thing, right?
Yes, absolutely. So again, a lot of the design concepts of the interior represents different aspects of the Shinnecock people, the people of the Stony Shores, our wampum making, our powwow stage, and a lot of that was incorporated into the design. This is just pictures of the interior of the design. Again, it will be 11,000 square feet. It will have all kinds of things for passengers to be able to stop and get one-stop shop. They'll have coffee. They'll have a little food area also in there. Throughout the building, there'll be displays of Shinnecock, things that mean a lot to Shinnecock, pictures of Shinnecock people throughout the years, restrooms, and that's the presentation, at least on the ins and outs of the project itself, the size and scope, and obviously the most important thing that people were asking about is, do the nation even have the authority to do it without zoning? I just want to say again, because I don't want to seem like I'm taking a certain tone, but it does take a lot, especially somebody in my generation. I'm 41, I got on council at 28. Prior to that, and even now, sometimes, the nation has seen extraordinarily challenging and demeaning aspects coming from the Southampton town and the state of New York. I've seen it in my entire life. Basically, every time we try to make a pursuit, oh, they don't look like Indians, they're not this, they're not that, we're gonna stop them. And I'm not saying that you guys have. So when I get up here sometimes, and it might seem like I'm getting agitated, is because it takes an extreme amount of calm and inner peace to try to navigate these conversations without coming off as being, you know, combative. And I do apologize, Councilman McNamara, if I did come off combative, but when it's the well-being of our nation and then just constant hurdles and hurdles and hurdles and hurdles, it becomes frustrating. Because I have to sit there every day with no tax base for our nation, seeing our tribal members in really bad housing conditions, seeing a school that we have to fund, not having a police department, not having certain things that requires resources, and then having a means to get those resources, and then being told to stop, you have to wait, you have to do this. And then we take those steps to try to work, and then it's another hurdle. Well, you have to wait until this litigation is done, or you have to wait until that. So it is very frustrating. I think we've made great strides on Shinnecock with our economic plans, and I hope, again, that in the future when we do economic development plans, that the town board will, this could have happened, 2 years ago. And I know that Shinnecock stands committed to engaging with the town board in a way that I did have, just to give credit to former Supervisor Schneiderman, we did have conversations and we did talk about a better relationship. Unfortunately, with this project and the way that kind of the years went by and everything like that, we did not have those continued conversations. And I hope in the future, again, with these projects that we can come and present. We're not bound to do it, but I think it's important, especially when you're talking about a major project. So I do want, go ahead.
I just want to say, Chairman, so you're not, and this is a really important point to, I think, emphasize here. You're not bound to be here, but you're
No.
here.
Right.
And I think that's a really good thing for the community to acknowledge
Yeah.
that you're here to be transparent
Yeah,
and demonstrate the need for the collaboration that we should be putting forth
Correct.
when we move ahead together.
Correct.
Now, I guess what I want to say is this is like the first step out of many. I mean, we've had conversations. You're here today, but do you plan to go other places?
sure. I do plan on addressing some of the concerns of the civic groups. I wanted to give the town board the opportunity first. I will be reaching out to members who had issues that was brought to our attention during the last meeting that we were here. Again, thank you guys for passing that resolution. Unfortunately, I had other engagements and I couldn't stay here, but there were questions that were raised by community members that surround the area. I do plan on reaching out to them and engaging the civic groups with the same presentation that we just presented today. Not saying that we're going to agree, but I think it's important that we do go and we address the concerns of those individuals.
And it allows you to have those discussions so that you can,
Correct. And just a note, though, this isn't easy for me to do this because there are tribal members who don't want us to come because of the years and years and years of frustration with the town. So this isn't 100%, I'm kind of going out on a limb, not just with my own community members, but within my own circle of peers coming here today and disclosing information that some tribal members say we don't have to, which we don't. So I just want you guys to really understand the level that this council that I work with currently is going to try to do this engagement at some time at our own peril with our own community members.
Along with that, everything I've read when I was first involved with the creation of the monument bill, I did a fair amount of research on the relations between governments and nation, and a lot of it is obviously in the West because that's where most of the larger nations are now. But it's consistently what I read, especially at a point where you have the status that you have, is that you have to work with the government, local governments, and the nation should be working together, trying to work
Correct.
together as much as possible.
Yeah.
The government relationship, and that's important. I constantly, every time I did some more research, every treatise I read, every book I read on it, case law, everything was all going back to that. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
encourage as much as possible.
And that's the angle I take as well, with the fire districts and ambulance district, where you're also in the Hampton Bays Water District, so that's going to be water mains and possibly upgrades having to do with that as well. So we look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. And I look forward to coming back. And again, I'm hoping that even if I'm not in office in the future, that this serves as a template for our own tribal members to come to the town. Again, we're not always going to agree, that's obvious. But I think open dialogue, civility, and communication is of the utmost importance with two governments. Just on that note, I know that there's issues between the town and Suffolk County and the state. You're always going to have these sovereign entities and these disputes. It's not just Shinnecock and Southampton town. And that's one of the things that myself and former Supervisor Schneiderman talked about was kind of a model that the town used in the past with Suffolk County. I don't remember the exact details.
The
but it was-
enterprise zone
yeah.
in West Hampton,
Yeah.
next to Gabrisky Airport. Suffolk County actually went through planning and with the town of Southampton, but
Yeah.
did not recognize the jurisdiction
Correct.
of the town over there. But they still went through the planning boards and they designed it in such a way that was commensurate with the community.
Correct. Correct.
And we have properties that are owned by the federal government, and they have.
Correct.
they
Yeah,
have-
so,
They have properties that we would
yeah.
like to have, and,
Yeah.
there's always
Yeah,
issues. right?
exactly. So again, the Shinnecock Nation obviously isn't going anywhere, and the town government's not going anywhere. So it's important for us to work together. And litigation just literally is, waste resources of both the town and the tribe, and it goes on for years. And at the end of the day, It's not, we believe that if there's any litigation, we would win, obviously. But it also creates extreme amount of tension between the two communities. So that was one of the things that I implored the town board of Mr. Schneiderman's. I'm imploring this town board is to work with Shinnecock rather than, going through the litigation processes that are out there. We've also implored New York State to do that. We had the Attorney General, Letitia James, come out and visit us. Even though they're suing us, it's kind of a weird relationship. But we did have good dialogue with the Attorney General, and she did invite a lot of the Native nations for the first time ever up to Albany in the beginning of her tenure, and we had a great conversation about litigation versus, cooperation and dialogue. And so far, that has proven good. The litigation predates her. And if anybody knows the ins and outs of how the agencies go to the Attorney General, it's really not the Attorney General who initiates a lot of that litigation. It's the actual agencies that go to the Attorney General's
is
office.
really essentially the litigation arm of the state.
Correct.
So
Correct.
If
They're bound to.
DOT has to have litigation. They have to represent it. They don't really have.
Correct.
Have
much
you
of a
reached
choice.
out to the governor's office?
Yeah, that's where.
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly,
That's
listen,
where
we
it
have
is.
a whole host of issues with the state of New York that we need constant interaction with, be it from our Indian Health Services to the New York State Department of Education. We get a lot of good communication from the various departments, obviously not the DOT. But Ms. Hochul, Governor Hochul's office has been very standoffish when it comes to Native Americans, not just our tribe.
She's removing
throughout.
murals, so,
What's that?
she's removing murals in the,
Yeah,
Capital, so-
yeah. What murals?
in the state capitol in the rotunda.
Oh, really?
There's Native American murals that are offensive, and she's having
Oh,
them removed,
wow.
so.
Yeah, but I mean that's a nice gesture. But I'm
That's what I
talking
mean.
more about yeah. There needs to be more actionable items, and that could be a whole 3-hour meeting in and of itself. Some of the horrible things that have taken place under her administration when it comes to Native Americans. But yes, we have lobbyists in Albany, so we do always try to reach out to the governor's office. We have been unsuccessful. There is a representative called Miss Elizabeth Fine who has been hired as a liaison to the Native American community. She's great. There was supposed to be a chance for us to meet during Native American Heritage Month. It was canceled, and then she vetoed very important legislation recognizing the Montauk Indians as Native Americans. So it's a contentious relationship, unfortunately, at the moment.
Elizabeth Fine is a state employee.
Yes, correct.
They exist. I went to school with them.
Yeah, of course they exist, and the judge in 1926 said they weren't a tribe. It's actually a travesty that you never get Albany to both houses come together and pass something unanimously, and then it gets vetoed. But unfortunately, it's not just the Hochul administration. The Cuomo administration vetoed it twice as well, and I just, for the life of me, don't understand it. So, again, another topic, but I am happy to come back and report our conversations that we have with the civic groups. I'm always available for meetings. You guys can come to Shinnecock. We can come here and just, open lines of communication. Obviously, there's other projects. I believe we will be participating in March with a press session from the Express Group going over other economic projects and actually taking questions from the community. During that, I believe they're going to invite members of this board to that press session as well. So, yeah, hopefully this kind of dialogue can continue.
Well, we are looking forward to reviewing that PowerPoint presentation you submitted, and we would like to see the traffic study. That would be
Yes,
helpful
yes.
too.
I'll send it over.
Thank
And
you.
Councilwoman McNamara, I will get in touch with my environmental department, and if you're willing to get on a conference call with Ms. Siobhan Smith.
I just wanted to point out the fact that
Yeah.
they said the entire
Yeah.
Seward, and it's not, so that's
Yeah.
it's a.
Well, I want to see
consideration.
exactly why they put that in there, and again, I would have to, because our environmental department has been over that.
It's,
Yeah.
most places are Seward, and
Yeah.
that's probably why they just
Okay.
assumed it was, but.
Okay.
Not in this town.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying, like, they're not from here, so they might not realize that it's not a.
Yeah.
I think Tommy John's correct. I think for the size of your project, I think like a on-site best system or something. It's more
I
than-
think, and that's why I said we'll put you in contact with my environmental department, because there could be, as Tila had said, a plan of action to provide our own sewage. So, I'm just not sure on that aspect. That's why I would defer to my environmental department head. So, all right.
Thank you,
Again,
Chairman,
Tabuni,
for coming
yeah.
to share all this information with us, and Ms. Collins.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Collins did want to close with some thoughts and reflections from the tribal council, so I would like to give some time to Miss Councilwoman Bianca Collins. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Polite. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. Thank you, Chairman Polite. I do appreciate you being willing and seeing the benefit in coming to the town council today, and just to kind of help breed a little bit more understanding amongst not only the town council, but our neighbors. And I want to thank Ms. Tila Troes also for her just dedication to the Shinnecock Nation, and for her research, and for helping to kind of explain the history of Westwoods and also the Shinnecock people. I do want to thank each of you individually. I have spoken to you, I would say all individually, and I do believe that there is a genuine willingness, openness, and desire to understand the Shinnecock people, and our perspective, and respect who we are, and acknowledge the history that we all share with one another. We are neighbors, but we are also community members in the town of Southampton. And I think that's something that we also need to acknowledge. I appreciate, certainly, the dynamic that has changed. I want to believe that the relationships that we're building intergovernmentally between one another are flourishing, are changing for the better, but there's still much more that needs to be understood. There's still much more that people need to be educated on. There is a history that Shinnecock people and indigenous people of the United States understand that many don't. Many of our neighbors don't. But it's through this willingness to learn and to be educated, to do the research, as Mr. James Burke has shared. He's done a lot of research. He has been very helpful to the Shinnecock Nation over the years, and we appreciate the relationship that we have with you currently. And it's my hope that willingness will remain there over the years. We are certainly, all of our people are willing to share and educate more people, and there are plenty of people within our community that are doing just that as we speak, day to day, even though it becomes tiresome and burdensome to take on that responsibility to help people realize and acknowledge who you are as a people, and who you have been, who your ancestors have been on this land since time immemorial. It's a constant dichotomy that we live in, to kind of have to justify who we are and what we're doing. And I just want to kind of speak from the heart as a council member, as a tribal citizen, as a public servant. I'm sure you guys can understand that. All of you can understand that. I wake up every morning and I think, how am I going to positively impact my community? And it's not just the people in my community, it's my family. These are 1,600, not just the 500 people that reside on our territory, the 1,600 tribal members whose lives we are responsible for. Their children and the next 7 generations, which we always reference. We're always thinking forward. We're always thinking about the 7 generations that preceded us and the work that they did, the people that have stood at this very podium and spoken about who we are as Shinnecock people. And every day I have to wonder, am I going to be able to impact these people's lives in a positive way? And we try to, and I know that you understand what that feels like. But you have to understand what it feels like when people are knocking on your door every day, every single day, and you don't have the resources to provide them. It breaks my heart every day, and I'm trying not to get emotional, but this work that we do, it is not taken lightly, and it is not easy, these decisions that we have to make, because we understand how many people we are going to impact. It's not just a gas station, and it's not just a plaza. It's not. We have people depending on this. We have to worry every day if we are going to be able to continue our programs for our elders, if we are going to be able to continue our programs for our children, if we have money to fix the roads, to upgrade our clinics, provide food, anything that these people need in emergency situations. Regular maintenance, all the things that you worry about, but the billions of dollars that get poured into the town of Southampton, we do not get a fraction of. We do not get any. And we have to fight for everything that we have. So this is not just a project that is going to provide sustainability. It's going to provide stability for our nation, for our organization to just function and hopefully grow. That is our wish. That is our desire, is to see it thrive. Our people deserve the right to thrive, just like everyone here, just like everyone else in our community. And we are steadfast in seeing that happen. We are going to make a way for our people, and we hope that we can do it together. We hope that we have the support of our neighbors, of our fellow community members. And so we are willing to continue this conversation and to continue to breed this understanding. That is all we desire to do. But you have to understand that these projects that we have been that have been suppressed and have been stopped at every turn over the years, we are finally gaining momentum, and we have to see them through. We don't want to see the roads damaged or anything like that. We want to do everything that's right. We want to support our local fire departments and EMS teams and everything, and the environmental departments, everything in every which way we can. We absolutely do. And we are willing to have those conversations and to find the funding to do so. But this is a project that is going to move forward, and it's going to change the lives of our people. So again, I thank you for taking the time to hear from us today. I thank Chairman Polite for providing this presentation to you all, and I look forward to the conversations that will follow. So thank you again. To Bootney.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. And thank you for reaching out to the
Well
community.
said.
I know you volunteer on our Community Housing Fund Board Advisory Committee, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. That was. It's hard not to.
It's a work of art.
Thanks.
Great collaboration.
Yeah.
Until it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Who's that?
It's just a resident.
Just said thank you.
All right, let's move.
Where's the judge here? I think he's. Why is the judge here?
No, we're still in work session.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Just, he maybe just
Doesn't need
popped
to
in.
stop that, right?
No, we're,
Shouldn't
I don't understand what's happening.
She's just making sure we're still rolling and he didn't stop, like thinking we were taking a break or the video.
Yeah, no, I understand. Everything's fine, right?
Continue.
Yeah.
Concerned about the executive session that you're gonna go into, but I'm assuming you'll.
No, we got,
Everything's
Okay,
fine,
we're
right?
gonna
Yes,
reset.
Okay,
everything's
good.
great. We're
You-
gonna do the
Agenda
draft
first.
agenda now, hopefully.
Well,
Okay.
whatever the supervisor would like.
So there are going to
here for
be
executive session.
Oh,
7 public hearings at the meeting on Tuesday. First one is a public hearing to consider establishing a sewer district known as the Riverside Sewer District in the hamlet of Riverside. And,
A continuation.
yes, that'll be a continuation. Then a public hearing to accept the donation of an undivided joint ownership interest of the Governor John Adams Dix Windmill from the Village of West Hampton Beach and to amend the CPF stewardship and management plan to include the structure for purposes of historic restoration and preservation. Third public hearing is to consider the acquisition of 38 Second Neck Lane located in the village of Quogue and to amend the CPF project plan and CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. Fourth public hearing will be to consider the acquisition of 40 Second Neck Lane located in the village of Quogue and to amend the CPF project plan and CPF management plan and stewardship plan to include the property. Fifth public hearing is on the acquisition of 710 North McGee Street in the hamlet of North Sea and to amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. The sixth public hearing is a proposed amendment of Chapter 123-14 entitled Stop Work Orders of the Code of the Town of Southampton to enhance enforcement capability. And the seventh public hearing is on the proposed amendment of Chapter 229-8, which is related to the public hearing number 6. Okay. So
Shall we
let's-
begin?
Yes, let's begin.
Somebody
with
gonna read bills?
Excuse me?
Somebody gonna read bills resolutions?
Who wants to read Bill's resolution?
I'll read bills.
Oh, all
I
right.
love that you did it.
Okay, very
I think
good.
so.
Town Board Resolution 45679, authorization for supervisor to sign application and contract to accept 2024 New York State Office of Children and Family Services funding for Southampton Town youth activities.
Town Board Resolution ID 45591, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, authorize conducting stop day events using Town of Southwood contract with MXI Environmental Services LLC.
Town Board Resolution 45645, sponsored by Councilman Pell, to authorize the purchase of a stump grinder from Vermeer, North Atlantic, using Sourcewell contract. 45665, sponsored by Councilman Pell, authorize the purchase of a wood chipper from Vermeer, North Atlantic, using Sourcewell contract.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45596 to authorize purchases and installation fencing with Residential Fences Corp. using Suffolk County contract and Eastern Suffolk BOCES contract. Oh. Town Board Resolution ID number 45688 to authorize purchases of welding, fabrication, and repairs using Suffolk County contract with Retrofit, Inc. Town Board Resolution ID number 45689, co-sponsored by Councilman Schiavone, to authorize the supervisor to execute agreements with Sun 20 TV vendors for production assistance. So I just wanted to know how this relates to what's happening with the upgrade that we're looking at.
I don't think it really speaks to the realignment of our TV stations. It's just the contracts that are currently in place.
It's renewing contracts that are currently in place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wait a minute.
Executive session, item 10.
45623, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with SourcePass Contemporary LLC to provide immediate assistance on bank hours basis to resolve the town's network connectivity issues.
Town Board Resolution 45678, authorize supervisor to sign application and contract with Suffolk County for 2024 Town of Southampton Youth Bureau programming.
45588, sponsored by Councilman Pell, authorize the purchase of a 2023 Ford F600 with landscape body from New York State OGS contract with Otis Ford Incorporated for vehicles class 1 through 8 statewide.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45627, authorizing the purchase of Motorola radios from Integrated Wireless Technologies LLC using Sourcewell contract with Motorola Solutions, Inc.
Town Board Resolution 45676, sponsored by Councilman Pell, authorize the purchase of guide rails furnish and install from H&L Contracting LLC and United Fence and Guard Rail Corp. using Suffolk County contract.
Resolution ID number 45683, authorize the supervisor to execute a consulting contract with H2M Architects, Engineers, Land Surveying et al. To provide on-call engineering services to the Hampton Bays Water District, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone.
Is this a new or a renewal? Is this something we already had?
Something
in
we
place?
usually,
Okay. Town Board Resolution ID number 45686, co-sponsored by Councilwoman McNamara, to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract amendment with Rayner Group, PE and LS, PLLC for land surveying, mapping, and engineering services to be provided for Old Farm Road improvements in Bridgehampton.
ID number 45685, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with H2M Architects and Engineers to provide geographical information systems, GIS, lead and copper support services for the Hampton Bays Water District.
Resolution 45624, authorizing the supervisor to execute a license agreement with Suffolk County Community College for use of the Eastern Campus Pool for 2024 spring lifeguard training.
Town Board Resolution ID 45673, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, authorize the supervisor to execute a licensing agreement between the town and Declan W. Blackmore, Edward F. Corrigan, and Harold Studi as stewards to farm agricultural lands identified by the tax map number as indicated of approximately 21.9 acres of land.
Town Board Resolution 45622. Authorize the supervisor to execute any and all documents relating to agreements with New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services for information technology, cybersecurity, assessment services.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45644, to award and authorize the supervisor to sign contracts for printing of decals, posters, tickets, and pads with dynamic printing, concept print, and rainbow printing.
Town Board Resolution ID 45666, award and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Integrity Tree Care, Inc. as a primary vendor and Jackson Dodds and Company, Inc. as secondary vendor for maintenance on trails in Southampton, co-sponsored with Councilman Isilli.
Town Board Resolution 45674, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, to recall and amend Town Board Resolution 2023-1215 to authorize the supervisor to sign any and all agreements for award of Community Preservation Fund, CPF, 20% water quality improvement project funds, aquatic restoration, and non-point source abatement control projects.
I think this was being amended just to correct the contract dates. Madam Clerk, I'd like to co-sponsor that resolution, please. Thank you.
Town Board Resolution 45682 it's also co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, to recall and amend Town Board Resolution 2023-1216 to authorize the supervisor to sign any and all agreements for award of Community Preservation Fund, CPF, 20% water quality improvement project fund, wastewater treatment projects.
I'd like to co-sponsor that also. Thank you.
Town Board Resolution 45687, recalling and amending Town Board Resolution 2024-86 that authorized the supervisor to sign an agreement Municipal Valuation Services, Inc., FKA, Michael Haberman Associates, for small claim evaluation and processing services.
Town Board Resolution 45621, this is renewal of Zendesk IT technical support ticketing. Town Board Resolution 45614, sponsored by Councilman Pell, to reject all bids for 30 Club Lane Maintenance Garage.
Town Board Resolution ID 45667, co-sponsored with Councilman Isilli, 2024 notice to bidders for Hot Dog Beach sanitary system improvements.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45557, to amend the 2023 budget for various departments. These are all interdepartmental budget neutral transfers.
Town Board Resolution 45655, co-sponsored with Councilmember Uselli, authorize budget modification to the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, for fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2023.
Town Board Resolution 45698, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, North Sea CAC membership of 2024.
Town Board Resolution ID 45636, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell. Resolution of adoption amending Chapter 123-14 entitled Stop Work Orders to Enhance Enforcement Ability. Town Board Resolution ID 45637, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell. Resolution of adoption amending Chapter 229-8 entitled Stop Order of the Code of the Town of Southampton to Enhance Enforcement Capability. Town Board Resolution ID 45707. Authorize the supervisor to submit a grant application to the Household Hazardous Waste State Assistance Program.
Town Board Resolution 45680, cost reimbursement, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara. Cost reimbursement waiver for the Remsenburg-Spionk Union Free School District Annual Memorial Day Parade on May 23rd, 2024, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Then we have Town Board Resolution 45671, designating April 30th as Adopt a Pet Day in the town of Southampton.
That's nice. You wrote
This is
that.
as a result of our visit
As
to
a
the
result of the visit.
animal shelter and I guess just for the public's edification, the shelter does provide a variety of services, including affordable veterinary care. So it's just a way to sort of bring attention to what they
Yeah.
do there and all the great work of the
Good idea.
volunteers.
Thank you, Councilman Iasidli.
Thank you.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45669 to accept the resignation of Allison Cerullo, Public Safety Dispatcher in Police Communications. Town Board Resolution ID number 45696 to appoint Diane
File.
It's File? To Senior Office Assistant Spanish Speaking in Town Clerk's Office.
Thank you.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45694 to appoint Eva Farmer to Office Assistant in the Land Management Building Division. Town Board Resolution ID number 45692 to appoint Jorge Garcia to Ordinance Inspector, Spanish Speaking in Public Safety. Town Board Resolution ID number 45691 to appoint Juan Becerra to Town Personnel Officer in Human Resources.
I'd like to co-sponsor.
Me as well.
Me as well.
I'm not going to
And-
speak for Mr. Pell, so he can do that when he returns.
I guess this interview.
Town Board Resolution 45681, authorize attendance at Colt Armorer's Course.
Town Board Resolution 45661, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, authorizing attendance at the New York State YMCA Youth and Government Conference in Albany on March 22nd to 24th, 2024.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45638, co-sponsored by Councilman Schiavone, notice a public hearing to amend Town Code Chapter 312-62, parking by permit at Wildwood Lake Park. And I had a question about this one, and I asked Sean, maybe, Jim. I just want to understand it, because some of the parking spots, maybe 7 or so, are owned by the town, and the rest are owned by the church, but we have an agreement that we can all use each other's parking.
Right, there is a cross easements, yeah.
So how would this work? I mean, if we're limiting, are we just limiting our own town-owned spots, or all of the spots do we have an agreement with the church?
I'll follow up, I don't know, I know we have,
It's a cross-access easement. It
Yeah.
runs with the property, is my understanding.
right.
So could
If
we
this is
just put a
specifically for the
restriction on
church
it?
property, I mean, for our on-site property, because I know we've done a lot of, we've changed a lot of the parking in the surrounding area, because that's one of the major
Right.
complaints was
And one of the changes was to put a permit requirement on that property, and this is
Right.
to extend that.
Right. Okay.
So how does it work? Do we give the parishioners stickers?
Yeah, we didn't have the issue last year because they were not open yet
Construction.
and constructed. And quite frankly, I think they're still working on it, but I will reach out to the church and we'll have to try to, if they are
I
going to be
mean,
in
we're
operation.
not
this year.
gonna give them town parking permits, but
Right,
if the church gives out stickers designating them as parishioners, they know they can use the lot.
Right, we may be able to, we have to work out something like that,
Yeah.
right? Where we have
But I
maybe a
would
certain
think we
amount
would have to
of
provide 'em.
passes or something like that, yeah. Yeah, if they're gonna be utilizing the property this year, and
Yeah,
that's true.
and
I
not
think
a,
they're-
not a town beach sticker. It would have to be something.
A church, like I said, a specific, like I'm a
Specific
church
for
parishioner
Wildwood.
sticker.
Right, just for maybe a particular time frame or something like that, but, yeah.
Our beach stickers are quite valuable. Coveted.
Well, wait, so would the parking for the church just be only during church hours? They
I
probably
think
wouldn't agree
honestly,
with
I mean,
that.
we can get clarification, but to me, it sounds like this is just for the whatever spots that we have that are designated as town spots that'll be listed as parking by town permit only, and the rest is all church parking, which they can put down that it's church parking,
Regulate themselves, yeah,
and they have to regulate that.
right. We can control the town-owned properties, right.
Because the last one that we did was for 1 year only, the pilot program, but that was for the entire parking lot, right?
Yeah,
I
and the
believe it
code that
was.
we're adding references designated spaces at Wildwood Lake Park to be
Yeah.
parking by permit.
We'll work
So
with them. We,
probably hours.
when we did it last year, I mean, obviously, this is in response to a lot of complaints that we receive in the area of essentially the overuse of this property, and there's real concerns from the neighbors and the Parks Department, quite frankly. It gets overwhelmed particularly on the Sundays. So, and speaking with the new owners of the church last year, they were very cooperative. They were working with us, so I know they're doing major renovations because they're actually, obviously converting a bowling alley to a church. So I'm not sure where they are and what their plans are and when they're going to be opening, but they were very, very cooperative last year with us. So I'll speak with them and find out what their plans are, and we can work out something that will kind of be in compliance with the cross easements that we have. on
Because
the
if we
property.
just limit it to the 7 town-owned spots, it's not going to accomplish much.
Right, right. The prior user, who was the bowling alley operator, he actually really kind of, we had worked out a relationship with him where they were actually controlling the parking to some degree. It was sort of, but it was, it wasn't the best scenario, but it was a practical scenario for the time. We really, again, it's kind of, we have to look at bigger picture on this property too. And then there's county-owned lands around this lake too. I mean, maybe we can work something with the county to relieve some of the pressure point for this specific property. 'cause-
I am engaging ongoing meetings with the community on this particular location. It, like you said, Counselor, the actual access point to the pond from this parking lot is a trustee parcel.
It's owned by the trustees,
And
yeah,
then,
yeah.
right, part of it is owned by
Right.
the town, and then, of course, you mentioned the church as well. And then
Right.
surrounding the lake is county land
Right.
and
Right.
state land, we think, although I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, I haven't
Anyway,
found that either. The state DEC actually has they have their signs and have some control.
They
They must have
both
some
went across the
relation.
We
way.
have
Yeah, but
historically
it's
had
not- it's
people from the
county.
community
It's,
come
from
and
around
alert
here,
us to
yes.
situations
IMA,
with
they've got
large
like a
crowds
stamp.
of people
Yeah.
coming down to Wildwood Lake and causing
County doesn't want to pay for it.
perhaps problems down there, and it's probably overloaded as to the capacity as well, and it's doing significant damage to the shoreline vegetation
Right.
around this pristine
Right,
lake. as
it's a
well. So-
pristine lake, and, there's people who want to enjoy it, which totally understand that, but it's, we just need to try to find better control of it. It does overwhelm even our park personnel. I mean, I know that Kristen's been concerned about, the site and having the ability of her staff to control it particularly on Sundays.
Well, let's try to clarify before Tuesday what exactly the public hearing is, what we're
Yeah.
doing.
And the question is the designated spots, and I believe they're the town spots. We'll get that clarification.
And I would like to
Yeah.
participate in a meeting if you're
Okay.
having one with the
With the
community
church,
members.
Ms. Supa, with the
You're
church?
in.
Well, with the community members,
Yeah,
but the church.
right. We've had a number of meetings with the community over the years, with our PD as well, and with Kristen and some of our folks in the park. So, we're exploring all options and the best way to proceed on this. It's not an easy answer to this,
Yeah.
And I think I think ideally it would be nice to get the county involved because they do have a lot of property that borders on the lake as well, and maybe there's something we can.
I am
work with.
concerned about the area. There's significant grubbing like clearing of the underbrush.
Oh, yeah.
That's happening, and the the cleared area is expanding because of
Right,
the human
right.
use, which,
Yeah,
Open
Again,
fires, like.
you know,
and it's not our residents.
yeah, you're right. A lot of times it's not, probably a good percentage is not town of Southampton residents, so. And our PD has been great. They've been down there. They try to keep control of it to some degree, but, and, you know, and Kristen's staff, it gets very stretched, you know, on the weekends on this project, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have to clarify, because if it's the same one that we did last year, and last year was the whole parking lot, then the only language that changed was just the dates, so it would be the whole parking lot, so that would be good to just find out.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Resolution 45699, consider acquisition of 4 Red Creek, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, Councilmember Yaselli. Consider the acquisition of 4 Red Creek Road in the hamlet of Hampton Bays and amend the CPF project plan and CPF management plan and stewardship plan to include the property.
Can we change that to authorize the acquisition? Because we've already considered
Yeah.
it and had the public hearing. And this is to authorize the purchase?
Which one is it?
Yeah, it should be authorized, and I'd like to
4, 5,
co-sponsor
6,
that
9,
one.
9.
I don't.
So you want
Yeah.
to change the word
56.
considered?
It does say it in the resolve, but we
Yeah.
can, yeah.
But it just, the title
Yeah, there
is
should be.
It's always good,
authorized.
always good to
Yeah.
clarify the titles. I'm a big fan of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Thank you.
There was an authorization resolution, and initially,
Yeah.
right,
All right, Town Board Resolution ID number 45704,
oh, we already have. yeah.
sponsored by Councilmember Scavone and Councilmember Iacilli, to consider the acceptance, donation of an undivided joint ownership interest of the Governor John Adams Dix Windmill from the Village of West Hampton Beach, and to amend the CPF stewardship and management plan to include the structure for purposes of historic restoration and preservation.
Town Board Resolution ID 45700, road review application for Karen M. Sojin at the tax map as indicated, situated at Hampton Bays is accepted.
And there's one add-on, document number 45713, memorializing resolution in support of Assembly Bill 7371 and Senate Bill 6899 as it relates to state and local clean energy partnership aimed at codifying community choice aggregation programs in the state of New York.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, it is, well, as it says, it's to put it in New York State unconsolidated law under the public service law that articulates the powers of municipalities as well as administrators as it relates to community choice aggregation. It's something that this town has been pursuing, and this would be some of the state laws that would go along with clarifying how, why, and, you know, other questions that municipalities would have in creating their own CCA programs. It's a good one.
Does anybody have any updates?
Updates.
No updates on my end.
We did just, the 4 of us
Yeah.
participated in the Association of Towns the last couple of days. It was a good opportunity to take some interesting classes and some team building and networking.
It was very good.
Yeah. And last Friday, Councilman Pell and I went to a program from the Cornell Cooperative had that shined a light on the needs of the commercial fishing industry. That was very interesting, and we want to be as helpful as we can. And we mentioned to them how we just allocated funding for the upgrades to the Shinnecock commercial fishing dock, so they were pleased to hear that.
Yeah,
After buying it and rebuilding it, which is what we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
right,
It's a good one, yeah.
yeah.
And I've actually reached out to County Executive Romaine about help basically shoring up the shoreline in front of that commercial fishing dock, because it's really, I mean, we're putting money into that commercial fishing fleet, and to have it be wiped out in one storm because of the way that the beach is there is troubling. So
Yeah.
he did, you know, commit to helping us, we're obviously gonna have to reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers, which is not a small,
No.
easy process.
Yeah.
But he's committed to helping us do that, and he understands the importance as well, and so I look forward to working with him on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
that's-
for contacting him about that.
Yeah, that's the area designated in the whole film project as WOSI, west of the Shinnecock Inlet. And they did, I mean, it's amazing how quickly that sand disappears.
Yeah, but without doing something to the inlet wall there, or putting
Yeah.
an artificial reef in front of it, it's just gonna continue to
Or
scour.
a sand bypass system.
Right,
of
needs
the-
something like that needs to
Of
be
the
done.
inlet.
What was
And
it?
that's the real
What
problem.
What was it,
The Army Corps of
three,
Engineers created that.
3 years ago, 4 years ago, when there was like temporary breaches going, I was there with our chief fire marshal and the fire minister, and the county was down there doing heroic work that night there. The ocean was jumping over the dunes, going across Dune Road into the restaurants and the commercial dock property and whatnot. And there were county workers and payloaders trying to push the sand up, and the ocean was washing over their payloader as they were in there. It was something that you don't see too often. It was
Bill Hillman and County DPW really came. they brought things
unbelievable
to
what
bear.
they did that night. Yeah, and it saved the road temporarily, and then the Army Corps did come in and they put down hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of sand, to the point where if you stood at Ponquag Beach, you looked across and it was a straight shot from Ponquag. The beach was full right to the end of the inlet, straight out to the end of the inlet, and then that got washed away in a matter of years. It spins, I guess, a cycle, whatever. It spins the sand right out of it.
If you look, the one groin sticks out way further, and it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
sputters in.
Right. So, and the Army Corps, as part of the WOSI project, just added more sand within the last year or so. And so it's,
And
Well,
to-
that was created in 1938 during the hurricane, and the Army Corps of Engineers, put hardened structures there, and so we've been dealing with it ever since. We like the inlet, but,
right.
it's
It's just
a federal
historically,
issue.
everything west of hardened structures,
Yeah,
have real issues, and we,
and there's also hydraulic jetting
They work.
action.
yeah.
There's a
They
lot
work
going on
on
there.
the east of it, but not so much in the west of it.
And then tonight, the VFW post in West Hampton is honoring several outstanding public servants. Deputy Sheriff Corey A. Finn, Brian J. Tuzil, Hampton Bays Fire Department, Lisa Fotopoulos, Hampton Bays Volunteer Ambulance, Taylor Kern, Southampton Town Police Department, Trevor Hayes, West Hampton Beach High School, Elizabeth Silva, a teacher at BOCES, and Charles and Carol Palumbo, trustees of the Alfred and Lucille Bronson Foundation. So everyone's welcome. I'm going to stop by and give out some certificates.
All right.
All right, well, I move to go into executive session and then close the meeting.
Second?
All in favor?